Hello and welcome back to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored.com in association with Odds Checker. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined as ever by George Elek, and this week we've got Sam with us as well. We're going to preview the weekend's Premier League action, as we always do. In fact, I say the weekend's Premier League action. Actually, the game week starts this evening with Brighton against Palace. I can't remember who's at home, but I know there is a game tonight, so don't forget to do your fantasy football teams if you are that way inclined. We're actually going to start with some teams of our own. WhoScored have compiled their Premier League team of the season so far based on WhoScored ratings. So me and the lads have done the same. We're not going to be taken seriously straight off the bat when I tell you who the goalkeeper is in the WhoScored team of the season so far. But lads, are you happy with your teams? George, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, pretty happy. There's one or two that are quite difficult. Like there's one omission that I think is probably ranks in the top 5 players in the whole league this season. But I think you have to do this properly. You can't Garth Crooks it and just wedge players in wherever you want in order to make it. It's got to be a functioning team, players in the right positions, and that's what I've gone for.
You say that, I may well have wedged a player into my team. We'll see what you think of that. Sam, happy with yours?
Yeah, well, there's a couple players that I wish I could put in, but I just can't because I subscribe to the George Elek theory of play players in the positions they play in. Don't be silly. Don't do anything wild. And that extends to the point where I only put left wingers on the left and right wingers on the right. I do not swap wingers, okay? I'm a bit of a stickler for this sort of stuff. So sounds like that's exactly what you've done, Dan.
No, nothing to do with wingers. I'd be exactly the same with wingers. There's one selection that's a little bit fluid, I would say, for me, but it was because I wanted someone else in my team, so I felt I had to do it. But I think I'll get away with it.
We might have done the same thing.
Yeah, I think most people will be okay with what I've done. Let's start with the WhoScored team of the season so far then. And like I say, Andre Onana in goal. I'm going to gloss over that completely. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Romero, Van Dijk and Mykolenko of Everton is the back four. Midfield for it is a WhoScored legacy 4-4-2 here. We've got Saka, Maddison, Rodri and Doku. Jonathan Wilson would not be having James Maddison in a midfield two at all. And then a front two of Haaland and Son. Thoughts on the WhoScored team, Sam?
Functionally, it doesn't work. And but that doesn't necessarily matter too much. I personally, I don't have Doku and I don't have Maddison because I think they've missed too many games. Doku has 9 starts. That's not enough starts. My threshold, my bar is higher. And Maddison doesn't have that many more. Obviously, he's missed a chunk of games now. I think he has 11. Again, I don't think that's quite enough. We've got some really, really good players here who are sort of 14, 15 plus out of 17. And I think if you've managed to make it that far, I think you need to be rewarded. So there are some question marks I have. Otherwise, Romero is not in my team. Mykolenko is not in my team. But really, where I draw the line is like, it's just not enough appearances. I think we need to value and appreciate the players that have been there for the whole hog.
Well, Maddison's actually the highest rated player in that team with 7.58, which is interesting. You forget, well, you don't forget, but he obviously hasn't played for weeks. You know, he was having an instrumental impact on what Tottenham were doing. They hadn't lost a game, had they? No. Before Maddison got injured. So he's a huge loss. I'm criticising the Onana selection, but his rating is 6.89, and he's the highest rated goalkeeper, which tells you, George, that standards might not be the best with goalkeeping across the board.
Or it tells you that the algorithm doesn't necessarily rate goalkeepers that highly.
Yeah, maybe it's
and
that.
Therefore, it's a low variance game. This goalkeeper's WhoScored rating malarkey, and therefore we shouldn't read too much into it. So, the thing is, when I'm not having a go at the general algorithm here. I'm just and also because when you look at the goals prevented metric from Opta or whoever you get your underlying numbers from, Onana comes out top in most of those as well. So undeniably, he is making a lot of good saves. But I think anyone with eyes can also see that he's made 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 clangers. Some of them out of the Premier League, it's worth saying as well. Like I think the amount of competitions that these teams play in, for example, when you watch him against Galatasaray concede one in particular free kick against Ziyech that's so poor, it's going to cloud your vision when it comes to the Premier League. But this is only a Premier League 11, so worth remembering that. But I do not have Onana as my keeper in my team.
Like Mambo number 5 going through his errors there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't remember who sang Mambo number 5.
Lou Bega.
That's
Lou
it.
Bega.
I couldn't remember. I was racking my brains for his name. Go on then, George. Let's have your team then. Let's see what George Elek has made of the season so far with his 11.
So I'm playing a 4-3-3, fluid in the midfield because, having said I'm not going to wedge anyone in, it's a bit of wedging going on. But in goal, I've got Vicario, who I think has been, since his a bit of a wobbly debut, has been so essential to what Spurs have been this season. A right back, I've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I think has been magnificent. I think comes under more scrutiny than any other player for some bizarre reason. Virgil van Dijk and William Saliba are my centre backs. Konza just missing out, with Saliba getting picked ahead of him. Mikalenko at left back, I think has been the best left back in the league pretty comfortably, and it's been massive for what Everton have done. 3 in midfield, a bit of wedging here because I couldn't leave out Rodri and Rice. So Rice has played on the left of the 3 a little bit this season, although it's not his desired role. And I think you can kind of have Rodri and Rice shuffling into a 2 with McGinn taking up either a role on the right of the 3 or as a more advanced player. I think his form, especially in Villa's very good recent run in those home wins against City and Arsenal, has been so important to where Villa are this season. I think if you're going to have a Villa player, which you have to do, he has to be in the conversation. So McGinn is the 3rd in the 3. And then the 3, Haaland up front. This is a bit of wedging because he's been playing up front for most part of the season, but Son is playing off the left in my team. He has played there a bit this season, albeit it's not his kind of main function, but I do think his goal involvements and how important again he's been to Spurs this season so far means he deserves to be there. And I've gone for Salah on the right, even though I think Bukayo Saka is just an unbelievable player and is playing incredibly well this season. You have to pick one of the 2. In my mind, Saka is part of a very well-oiled machine at Arsenal, and if you take him out, I think they would miss him. But I think if you took Mo Salah out of this Liverpool side, there's absolutely no chance they would be where they are in the league this season, and that is how I've come to the decision for Salah over Saka.
Got to say, I think that team's better than mine. That's a good tell. I also think it's better than WhoScored team as well. I will say you've done some interesting things there. I think that's a good lineup. Had you seen WhoScored team before you put Mikalenko in, or did that was just off your own back?
No, I basically struggled and I looked at basically all the left backs in the league, and then crucially with them, I mean, I had seen the Mikalenko previously to this recording was high, but then I went and just read what Everton fans have said about him to see if it kind of marries what I've seen, and all of them to a man are basically saying he has to be the best left back in the Premier League. I think there is often with players like him who are a bit unfashionable, you can get kind of noisy results and things, but I do think in his case, you watch him and like he's a brilliant one-on-one defender. He offers a load going forward. He's coming under Dyche as well. And it's not a particularly crowded market, I would say. The best left back in the Premier League this season.
It was tough, wasn't it, to pick between, just no one. You run through it and you're like, well, City use centre backs at left back, and Vardiol hasn't been too convincing, and Ake hasn't played very much. Robertson's been injured. You start to run through it. Zinchenko's been injured and a little bit error prone at points, and you start to run out of ideas. Mikalenko was my second choice. He has been really, really good. Like, I absolutely support George on that one, and I agree with all the Everton fans, but he wasn't my pick.
I very nearly, because I don't agree with my own left back pick here, but I didn't feel I'd seen enough of Mikalenko to say that I could put him in my team. I nearly put James Tarkowski. I was very close to doing that, because every time I do watch Everton,
not a left back,
but not a left back, but in my team in general. And obviously Everton are having a good season. They've just had a 10-point deduction. Let's just focus on left backs. We'll reveal the rest of mine and Sam's team afterwards. Who have you put in then at left back, Sam?
Udogie. I went for Udogie, yeah. It was between him and Mikalenko. Udogie's been sensational. Absolutely brilliant. I've loved Spurs' fullback pairing, to be honest with you, and I felt like Udogie had deserved this. It's been a spectacular start. I didn't really see it coming. That's probably part of it, although Mikalenko exploding from an attacking perspective is also a lovely surprise. So there's 2 names here that I didn't think we'd be discussing. But Udogie, I think, has been an absolute force for Spurs. So I think he deserves it.
A bit of a spoiler for mine. I was going to put Udogie in, but then I felt like I couldn't have 2 Spurs fullbacks, so I didn't put Ooh doggy in, and also I can't say his name without going ooh doggy. And there's some ooh doggy.
Don't worry, I got you covered.
There's some ooh doggies down here that are absolutely doing my head in through this podcast so far. I've put Zinchenko in just because when I watch Arsenal, I just love him. That's probably a little bit biased because he probably isn't having the strongest season, but I just think when he plays, Arsenal are an infinitely better side. So that I put Zinchenko in as my left back. Let's run through your team then, Sam.
Okay, so I've got Vicario. I think pretty much by every metric, he's been the best. Alisson and Emi Martinez have been amazing, but Vicario has been a smidge better. I've got Porro and Udogie. I did the Spurs double, Dan, that you were too scared to. I think as a pairing, they've been unbelievable. And I think they've been the source of a lot of what's been great about Spurs this season. I've taken Saliba and Van Dijk, so same as George at centre-back. I've taken Rice and Rodri, and I've put Trent in midfield because that's where he basically plays. I was like, look,
that's exactly what I've done, by the way, as well.
Spends more time in midfield than he does at right back, and I want Porro in. So I put Trent in, and that meant Douglas Luiz unfortunately had to step aside. I felt very bad about that, but Trent this month, or since sort of like the back end of November, has been on a completely different level. It has been absurd watching him play. And in my front three, I've got Saka, not Salah. I've got Son on the left, and I put Ollie Watkins up front.
Interesting. Yeah. Some similarities with my team there, actually. So I'll rattle through mine. Vicario makes it a clean sweep in goal. Porro, Saliba, Van Dijk, and Zinchenko is my back four. I will say on Pedro Porro, one of my favourite players to watch. I think he's absolutely brilliant. He's so tactically switched on. And actually, if he was to get injured for Spurs, I think that would kill them because they don't have anyone to do what he does at right back at all. My midfield three is Rodri sitting with Douglas Luiz and Trent Alexander-Arnold in front of him. I felt that was a nice move. I could not put Douglas Luiz in, having watched him every week and deciding he's going to. No. It was him or Douglas Luiz. I went Douglas.
And you're biased, so
I've said I sit there and watch Douglas Luiz every single week, and he is absolutely exceptional, and he's one of Villa's most critical players, and Villa are in the top three of the Premier League. So I felt like,
and soon he'll be playing alongside Declan Rice as well for Arsenal.
Villa signing Declan Rice. I had absolutely no idea that Villa were signing Declan Rice, George. And then my front three. This feels a little bit biased as well. I've gone Salah over Saka just because I think Salah is so consistent and his output is absolutely incredible. It just continues all the time, so it almost gets forgotten how good he is. I don't think Saka's been quite as good as he was last season, whereas I feel Salah's been just the same as he has been for the last 3, 4, 5 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I feel he's been just as good. I've done the same as you, Sam, and gone for Watkins over Haaland up front. Absolutely incredible striker for Villa. And then I felt like my team, I was picking players that were playing towards the top and not picking anyone else. So I've actually gone for Wang.
Really?
In my front three.
Wow.
His output for a team
wild.
So
it's almost like me saying the Brighton were going to win the Premier League.
not quite as bad as that. He scored a lot of goals. Wolves are a decent team to watch on it. Every time I watch Wolves, I think they're a better side than I always remember them being. And his output from his position in the front three is it's high. It's up there with some other players. So I thought, why not put Wang in, see if I can get the Wolves fans on side with me a little bit, because when I go on Sky, I get bullied by them on social media.
This is it, wasn't it? You felt bad about how many Villa players you put into the 11. You got to the last spot and thought, I'll balance the argument, stick a Wolves player in.
Yeah, but you can't say it's like a terrible shout because he is having a good season.
No. I agree. It's just when you look at the list of players, and albeit you've stuck to the brief better than us by playing someone in there where they actually play. But when you look at the players,
played enough on the left. Come on, it's fine.
But when you a central striker now.
But when you look at the players that aren't going to be in your team, I think Hwangi's going to be bit of a he's going to be delighted. Sure.
But it's not who's the best players here. It's not pick the best players.
Who's having the best season.
It's pick who's having the best season. I admit I've made some questionable choices in there, and Declan Rice not being in my team is almost a sackable offence. I know that. I know that myself. But I wanted Trent, but I wanted Porro, and I wanted Douglas Luiz, and I'll just think again Rodri, because he's good every year. You almost forget about it, but he's just brilliant. When he hasn't played, Man City have lost, so I just felt there was no place for Declan Rice. It was a toss-up between those three and Declan Rice, and I could have put Declan Rice in for any of those three, but I chose not to because I just fancied. I was like, let's get some Arsenal fans giving me shit on socials. That was what I wanted. Yeah. So we'll try and get this up on social to see who the general public or the Who Scored public think has the best team. Actually, if he's watching, ask our producer to just tell me now whose he thinks is the best team if he's been listening, and then we'll reveal what he thinks. So the producer has revealed that he thinks George's was the best, but he did also reveal that he wasn't listening all the way through. But I will say I quite like George's team as well. So I think George the bloody dogs. I think George has potentially got the best team there in my opinion. I don't even think I've got the best team, and I picked it. I was so worried about missing someone out as well. I was like scouring through every squad. I wanted to give a special shout out goalkeeper wise actually, because I was thinking about putting him in. Kaminsky at Luton. He's made so many saves. Absolutely brilliant. He was my next choice in goal. Yeah. So, not just looking at the big teams in my team. That's a
bit of a case of the old David Marshalls at Cardiff, though, isn't it? Where you are subjected to so many shots, an overwhelming amount of shots, that you do end up making a lot of saves. Although he has held on to a few that have been blasted. I think they would have gone straight through me, out the other side, and he's held on to them. Some of the saves and then the holds that he makes, they are incredible, to be fair to him.
We're talking about comparing Premier League goalkeepers, and you've just thrown yourself into the mix. I thought you were going to say it would have gone through most Premier League goalkeepers, and you've said it would have gone straight through me.
So no, what I mean by that is it would have gone straight through my body, flesh and all, okay. out the other side, created a hole.
I thought you were putting yourself up there with the Premier League goalkeepers.
Well, 6'4", good arm span. Yeah,
you're 6'4".
Yeah.
I've met you, but it was so long ago, I can't remember.
Yeah.
I remember I told you. Okay. Let's do that was a nice little start to the pod. Let's do Liverpool against Arsenal and carry on this rhythm on the pod. We've obviously just spoke about SAKA and SALAH. How good is SAKA, Sam? Because he's probably the most consistent young player in world football. I can't remember if I've said this on this show, but I think because Bellingham as a young English player is so good and obviously out of this world, almost what SAKA does gets underrated a little bit. He's only 22 and he's just consistent year in, year out. Although, as I said, I don't think he's quite reached the heights of last season.
It's one of those things where SAKA has been playing every week, and I mean every week, because he went 87 games in a row without a rest for like 3-4 years now, right? Since Unai Emery was in charge of Arsenal. That feels like a decade ago. It wasn't. It was like 4 years, but feels like a long time ago. He's been playing every week since that time. So you just kind of get used to it, right? But Bellingham has been afar. He's been that really attractive, shiny penny in the distance that you catch a glimpse of every now and then, and you think, wow, and he's new to you. And it's a little bit like the syndrome everyone's experiencing right now, where a lot of Arsenal fans are suddenly realizing that Harry Kane is pretty damn good, and they were unable to appreciate him because he was right there in Tottenham colours the whole time, right? So it's basically Saka's worn us down with his consistent brilliance. He's like, that's normal. That's normal. Haaland has 14 goals this year. I'd barely noticed. Because he's Haaland.
Yeah.
This is what he does. So when Saka's right there in front of you every week, it gets lost on you sometimes. And every now and then you just have to take stock of it and go, hang on a minute, what I'm watching is not normal. Him and Jude Bellingham, to be fair, both, and Vinicius Jr. is in the same rough age bracket. What they're doing is not normal. Not normal at all. I am surprised that I'm the only one of the three of us that has got Saka in the team of the season so far over SALAH. I did not think I would be in the minority.
I just feel like Salah's numbers, isn't he? Like near the top of the scoring charts and top of the assist charts. Like it's just his output that's frightening every year on year. That's my sole reason for doing it.
It's not even year on year. It's just this season. It feels like SALAH. Like this is, I try to make the point earlier. This is nothing against Bukayo Saka. Like me leaving Saka out of that team isn't a reflection in any way of his incredible ability and still potential. Like I kind of agree with Sam where. It doesn't really feel like, it's more and more in the last kind of 18 months. I think people are giving Saka the praise he deserves, but it still doesn't feel like it's gone far enough. Like we have an English player playing for Arsenal who's 22 years old, who has the capability and the capacity to be not just like a world-class player, but one of the best players in the world for a very long period of time in every sense. He's incredibly, If you look at the way that he plays the game, like he isn't just an explosive wide player. Like you talk about Vinicius, and that is what he is. And it feels like he's so destructive in terms of what he does. And I'm not going to call him a one-trick pony, but like a clear way that Vinicius hurts teams. Whereas with Saka, it feels like he can hurt you in so many different ways. You know, he's incredibly tidy on the ball. He makes good decisions consistently. He has the pace to go past a player. He's creative with his passing, and he's a massive goal threat from anywhere, basically. Like, he is an absolute boy wonder.
Yeah, we look at his season upon season ratings, and there's a lovely graphic here for those that are watching on YouTube. So 1920, when he made his breakthrough, it was 6.65. In 2021, he went up to 6.88. In 21-22, he got into the sevens with 7.06. Last season, his average rating, according to WhoScored, was 7.40. And this season, so far, making a mockery of what I've just said about him not being as good as he was last season, it's 7.61. So a lovely little trajectory there. The question for you, Sam, here, you know, we think about the great Arsenal sides, and we can only talk about in our generation because we didn't watch the great Arsenal sides of the years previous. The Invincibles, Ljungberg and Pires on the flanks, absolutely brilliant. Is Saka better than they were? I know it's hard to judge, but is he better than them?
What a horrible
killer question that I'm not going to answer.
I don't know the answer to that, man. It that feels like so long ago, because it was. I even struggle thinking about the Villa teams from 15 years ago, and that's my team. Let alone
that's because you want to forget them.
Let alone, well, yeah, true. But trying to compare Douglas Luiz and Boubacar Kamara to Gareth Barry and James Milner is actually really difficult for me. So comparing Saka and Martinelli to Ljungberg and Pires, oh my god! I guess you probably
his numbers will be up there, I suspect, because he hits double figures, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. I mean, I guess the obvious answer is, that team won. They won games when it mattered. They won trophies. This Arsenal team have won an FA Cup or whatever. They haven't conquered the pile. And football is very often a see it to believe it sport. It's about what have you got in the cabinet quite a lot of the time. It's about, can I trust you to do it? Well, have you done it before? So in that sense, I'd still give the nod to the legends. But yeah. I genuinely look at this Arsenal team right now, and I think I see the best team in the league. So let's talk about it in May when Arsenal potentially have won the title, because this looks on to me.
Yeah, just seem to have forgotten that they won the Community Shield in the summer, Sam. Absolutely poor from you.
My bad.
Yeah, George, I will ask you the same question. Where do you think he would rank? I know it's hard to say because his career hasn't finished, isn't it? But
yeah, like I think it is really hard to say. Like I read an article I remember a couple of weeks ago that said, or was it last week, that said that after his 200th appearance for Arsenal, Saka scored, I think, 10 more career goals than Ronaldo had after his 200th professional appearance. So, like, I think because he's been around for a while, you kind of assume now that Saka is just going to continue on a similar trajectory, where there is scope for him to massively improve again. So, comparing him to two players who've finished their career, who, frankly, aged 22, I don't think Pires or Ljungberg were anywhere near the level that Saka is now. So, I think he's definitely got the capabilities to eclipse what they did, not only in an Arsenal shirt, but in world football. So he's a massive talent. I just genuinely don't think there is a ceiling that you can put on Saka. And I also believe that there will, I thought it might be this season, and it may still happen in the second half of the season, but soon he'll become more prolific, and he won't be a player that scores 10 to 12 goals a season. He'll be a player that suddenly scores 20 plus goals a season. I want no doubt about that. There's no reason why that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, someone who's scoring goals at the moment, Sam, is Kai Havertz. He's got 4 in his last 7. Has Mikel Arteta found a way of getting the best out of him? Because his stats pre and post the November international break, that they're stark.
They are, yes. There's a big difference. I'll start by giving Havertz some credit, but then I'm going to take it away from him really fast. He's taking on more shots. He looks more confident. And I think he looks quicker across the ground, which was my big gripe with him, how lethargic he was looking to start the season. That might be my imagination, though, about him moving across the ground quicker. And Arsenal, they get a lot of corners. They get to put the ball in the box. He's a tall player. He is benefiting from these scenarios. But I would put this more down to Gabriel Jesus returning from injury than anything else. The pre and post international break stats that you refer to directly coincide with Gabriel Jesus's return from injury. And when he plays, he unlocks a whole different level from so many of those players that he plays with. He's one of those proper rising tide lifts all boats players where he just elevates everybody around him and he adds so much to the attack. And if you're looking at sort of Havertz there is improving, well, just about everybody has. All of Arsenal's metrics are up post-November international break. I think it's down to Jesus, a lot of it. I mean, well done to Havertz for seizing the chance, taking the opportunities, being more assertive. We needed that from him. He didn't look confident. Now he does. But I think the source of it all is Jesus. Really, he's a very, very good player, and he lifts everybody else around him.
Interesting view, because a lot of people, I'm trying to say a lot of people, mainly on social media, will say Arsenal need a goal scorer, but Jesus he's a bit of an enabler, isn't he? He's a smart footballer. He might not give you the goal output, but I think with him in the team, I think other people around him kind of replace that goal output. Sorry, if it makes sense. Let's have a quick squiz over the Liverpool and Arsenal combined 11 before we talk a little bit about Liverpool. It's Alisson in goal, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Van Dijk, Gabriel, and Timošas as the back four. Declan Rice is holding with Ødegaard and Szoboszlai in front of him, and then it's an all Arsenal front three, surprisingly, with Saka, Jesus, and Martinelli. You surprised by that team? Especially that front three, George?
Saliba wasn't in there, was he?
No, Saliba wasn't in there. Gabriel's ahead of him and Van Dijk.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
I guess if they were doing it proper, mind you, Van Dijk plays left centre back as well. I was going to say maybe it's because Gabriel's a left centre back, but Van Dijk plays left centre back as well.
I don't agree with that. I also don't think. I mean, Martinelli's inclusion is a bit of a surprise. Like I'm a big fan, but I don't really see how he gets into that team this season. Maybe
since he's got in my fantasy football team, he doesn't want to know. Absolutely doesn't want to know.
I'm pretty surprised. I also think with Liverpool, Salah's obviously the star, but we've said it before. When you look at the, I think the other players in that front three, whether it is Nunez, despite him still not being prolific, or whether it's Luis Diaz, these players are all playing really significant parts in this season. I'd probably rather have Diaz on that left hand side than Martinelli at the moment in my mind. So yeah, quite surprised, but taking the Jonathan Wilson line, I'm don't place massive weight in combined 11s personally.
No, okay. Nice knowing you, George. Be good to see you. Good to see Ali on the show. Good to see Ali on the show.
Do I not have the same clout as Jonathan? Do I not get to say that?
Jonathan can say what he wants. Although Jonathan was every week last season, and now he's only every other week. So maybe that'll be you after what you've just said. So George, staying with you. Just how good have Liverpool been recently? Because it feels like they've had some close results. They've scored some late goals, which, without playing your best, when you win games, I think that's always the sign of a good team. Not many people were shouting about Liverpool challenging for the title at the start of the season. Are they the real deal? Are they in a false position? What have you made of them?
Firstly, I definitely don't agree that winning games, playing badly is a sign of a good team. I think it's a sign of a successful team. I think if you're going to win things, you probably have to have a slice of luck, which includes edging games where you haven't necessarily been at your best. But I think ideally, the best teams, like Manchester City for the second half of last season, for example, will basically just wipe the floor with any team they play against and have a high performance level. But with Liverpool, that their ability to. You look at the 4-3 win over Fulham, where they were 3-2 down with 3 minutes to go and managed to score twice. You look at the 1-1 draw at Luton, where Luis Diaz scored very late in the game to get an equaliser and to draw that game. Even the Palace game, where they played against 10 men, but were 1-0 down with 15 minutes to go and managed to win the game 2-1. I personally think they have to improve. Like this won't continue to happen. Like, they're not going to continue scoring injury time goals to win games and keep up the pace with Arsenal and, if City ever turn it around this season, City as well, and Aston Villa. So it's a bit of a concern, but I think winning games of football, especially off the back of a disappointing campaign, especially off the back of quite a lot of player churn, in itself can galvanise and can help a club kick on. So they haven't been great. I think I agree with Sam in that Arsenal right now look to me to be the best team in the Premier League with their performance level, but there's no denying. You look at Liverpool last night and against West Ham in the EFL Cup, and that was a scintillating display where they completely dismantled David Moises' side. And performances like that will certainly get them not needing to rely on late goals in order to win games.
I guess in this title race as well, Sam, and this isn't on the script at all, but I've just thought about it. The African Cup of Nations is going to cause more problems to Liverpool than it's going to Arsenal, isn't it? Do you think there's like one of these two teams that needs to be busier in January? Do you think they will act in January? I've never really seen Liverpool as a January team, except for when they sold Torres and bought Andy Carroll and Suarez. They don't strike me as a team that do business, and Klopp's a manager that doesn't really do business in January.
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool, I think if they enter the market, it's not because of the Africa Cup of Nations. You are right in that they are obviously going to lose a big hitter in Mohamed Salah for as long as he's out there. They're used to this, for what it's worth. They had a Salah and Mane wing combo for a long time, and they both left during AFCON every time it happens. So it's not like this is a new issue for Liverpool to solve. In fact, they've halved the issue because Mane is no longer departing. They're also not losing Naby Keita, although I don't think that actually matters. I don't think Arsenal were going to lose anyone except Thomas Partey, but he's not been around for the last 3.5 months anyway. So I'm not sure what the noticeable drop off is, if at all. So yeah, Liverpool probably suffer a little bit. I mean, they probably suffer. I mean, he's in team of the half seasons here. Like, they're going to lose him for a bit. It's going to hurt. But if they're into the market, it's not to cover that, right? It's because Joel Matip has unfortunately torn his ACL. There was already discussion over whether or not they'd be looking at a centre-back. Maybe Matip's injury kind of accelerates that, although you have to respect the fact that Joel Kwanzaa has been pretty good. Yeah, and Joe Gomez is back and is pretty serviceable. So, and you
can't rely on his fitness, can you?
And you can't rely on Ibrahima Konate's fitness either. He's also seemingly extremely injury prone. So I think there's reasons to go in and reasons not to. I don't know what they'll end up doing. Might be down to FFP. That's kind of like the gold standard for every answer here, isn't it? It might be down to FFP. We've already started seeing a few directors, a few general managers and sporting directors coming out and going, well, we're not going to be too active because, what was it John Murtough said, the Man United director? FFP has real teeth. Or something like that, as real teeth, and that's a reference to Everton, and they won't be the only team feeling like they can't overstep the mark here.
Yeah, I mean, most of us have real teeth. In fairness, unless you reach a certain, I think everyone on this podcast has certainly got real teeth. Anyway, let's do some score predictions for this one. Then, George, I'll come to you first. What's your score prediction for Liverpool against Arsenal?
I've got Liverpool 2, Arsenal 2.
I nearly did that. I was so close to a 2-2, but I've gone for 3-2 to Liverpool, a late goal, I reckon, to win the game, a goalkeeping error. Sam?
I've gone for 1-1.
1-1.
That was the most specific prediction I've ever heard from Dan there. 3-2 with a late goal and a goalkeeping error.
Yeah, I just got a feeling. That's what I'm feeling in my bones. That's what I'm feeling in my bones, George.
Nice.
That's what I've got. 5 goals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know why I keep doing that.
Because
right then,
what's funny?
It was funny the first time. I'm not sure it's funny the third time. What should we do next? Should we go through our general predictions for the other games and then look at Wolves and Chelsea afterwards and mix it up a little bit this week? Come on then. Palace against Brighton, which is actually tonight. Sam?
1-1.
1-1, loves a 1-1, Sam. George, 1-1 as well?
1-1, yeah. Big game for Roy, this, isn't it? With Cooper back on the market.
Yeah, but I've gone for 2-1 to Brighton. Late goal. There's going to be a late goal somewhere. Villa v Sheffield United on Friday night. I've gone for 2-0 to Villa. George?
3-0 Villa.
3-0 Villa. Sam?
3-0 Villa.
Oh my days, Villa top of the league by Friday night. Then if our predictions are to be correct. West Ham against Manchester United. Sam?
0-0.
0-0. Very good. Very, very nice, George. In the real world?
2-1 West Ham.
2-1 West Ham. I've gone for 2-0 to West Ham, but that was before I watched them play last night. Again, what was the strong side against Liverpool as well? Hello, dog. Right then. Fulham v Burnley. I'll go first. I've gone for 3-1 to Fulham. Sam?
2-1 to Fulham.
2-1 to Fulham. George?
2-0.
2-0 to Fulham.
Fulham. Yeah.
Luton against Newcastle. Sam?
Newcastle win 2-1.
2-1. I've gone for 2-0 to Newcastle. George?
1-0 Luton.
Yes, I thought he would.
Luton, he loves it. He loves it. Oh,
he loves Luton at home, and he loves a differential.
Yeah, they're okay at home. They've gone pretty well at home.
Okay. Superb at home.
Superb at home, sorry. Right, I got given the wrong game here. It's not Forest v Brentford, is it? It's Forest v Bournemouth. Nuno Espirito Santo. Is it Di Santo or Santo? I can't remember.
There's no duh.
He's been out of the Premier League so long, I've forgotten his name. So Forest against Brentford, Sam.
No, Forest against.
No,
Bournemouth.
Forest against Bournemouth because I was sent the wrong picture. Forest against Bournemouth.
It's a Desmond for me.
2-2.
Yeah, it's a Desi for me.
Okay, I need a 2-2 then. Absolutely lost the plot. George?
2-0 Bournemouth.
2-0, but I've gone for 1-0 to Forest. And I did that before.
Wow, all three results?
No, I did that actually after Nuno got hired. Just a Nuno masterclass, 1-0. Spurs v Everton, I've gone for 2-2. George?
2-0 Spurs.
2-0 Spurs. Sam?
3-2 to Spurs.
3-2 to Spurs.
What a game.
Yeah, there's a lot of goals this week, isn't there, according to us? And then we've got Liverpool, Arsenal, which we've already done. And we'll come on. Oh, no, let's do our Wolves v Chelsea prediction now before we talk about the game. Let's reinvent the wheel completely here. Wolves, Chelsea, I've gone for 2-1 to Wolves. Sam?
2-1 to Chelsea.
2-1 to Chelsea. You'll probably get that right because every time I predict Wolves to win, they lose. George?
1-0 Chelsea.
1-0 to Chelsea.
Announces himself to the Premier League.
Oh, wow. So there's some interesting predictions this week. Last week was not a brilliant week for me at the top. I only got 3 points. And George, you only got 4 points. Jonathan Wilson. Yeah, Jonathan Wilson got a massive 9 for him and Sam there. I don't know how he did that. Absolutely sensational week from Willow there. Right, we've got to do our accumulator, haven't we? Our treble, and we haven't discussed it. So, who wants to take what this week? George, as you had the best team, I'd say I'll let you take what you want.
Okay, I will take Luton to beat Newcastle.
Oof.
No, I'll take the Palace Brighton draw.
Palace Brighton draw. Dog did not like that one bit.
So it's going to be over by the time we get Saturday anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, there's a bit of a problem here as well because if I'm taking the away win, I've only predicted 2 away wins, and they're the game that you two have just taken. So I can't use either of them.
Let's redo that.
Let's redo it.
You take the away win, Sam.
Yeah.
Go on then. We'll leave that in. Bit of funny, isn't it? Bit of japes.
Away win. I have to take Chelsea against Wolves, my friends.
Okay then. Yeah. And then that means I have to take the draw, which leaves me looking at Spurs Everton.
Nice. Big price.
Decent price, yeah.
Big price. 47.33 to 1. So nearly 50 to 1 for the Tottenham Everton draw, Luton and Chelsea treble. Guess who the top price are? Dan Bardell.
BetMGM.
It's BetMGM.
Go on, MGM. Right, Wolves against Chelsea then. I mean, it says in the script here, how unlucky have Wolves been this season? Rattle off some decisions that have gone against them, but we probably don't have time for that, George.
No, you could rattle them off.
Man U, the penalty. That's one.
Yeah.
See if we can, there we go. That's an easy one. What else was there?
George knows them all.
I thought he did. That's why I asked him.
No, I don't. If I'd done some prep, I could have done it.
I'll tell you what, there was one that they should have given a penalty away against Villa that didn't get given. No one talks about that. Don't talk about that, do you, Wolverhampton? When he pushed Ollie Watkins over. I know there has been loads.
Oh, it was do you remember it was the Fulham game with the penalties?
Oh,
Fulham, yeah. That was where Gary was really ticking afterwards. They've had loads, and there's no denying they've had loads. But it's also like having said I don't believe in the whole. You're a good team if you win playing badly. I also think the whole idea of, it evens itself out over the course of the season is one of the weirdest things that people say. Like, I do not understand why people believe that there is some magical spell that goes on that if you're getting unlucky in the game, but don't worry about it because by the end of this arbitrary amount of games that we play over the course of 9 months, by the end of it, it's all taken care of. You don't have to be concerned.
It's not a magical spell. It's called the law of averages.
But the law of averages has to be so much longer for that to be the case. 38 games is a tiny sample size. How is there this belief that you cannot be unlucky over the course of a season? Of course you can. If a season lasted 1,000 years, then maybe you'd be getting somewhere. But of a small, it doesn't make any sense at all. So I feel very sorry for Gary O'Neill because, luckily for them, it doesn't feel like there's going to be much of a relegation issue. Partly because they're pretty good, and partly because the 3 teams at the bottom look like they're going to struggle to be overly competitive. So it shouldn't matter too much, but. in terms of his career progression and him wanting to ensure that not only does he stay at Wolves for as long as possible, but probably, for his ambitions of being an English manager that's appealing to clubs maybe higher up the food chain, it does impact him. So, I feel bad for them, and hopefully it evens itself out over the course of the season.
I mean, every time I tweet, if I think Villa have had a bad decision, I will get someone tweet me back saying, well, you shouldn't have stayed up because the goal line technology against Sheffield United. Every time Villa get any form of decision or don't get a decision.
In the 28th game of that season, that pivotal moment that decided it all.
Kept Villa up. Villa would not be where they are now without Neeland falling over the line and the goal line technology not working. That's an absolute fact. I have to keep apologising for the dogs here because it's so windy outside. They think the house is blowing down or someone's trying to get in the house. It's very, very windy here and very, very noisy. Let's talk about Cunha then, Sam. A player before he started scoring, I was thinking he's actually a really good player. He just needs some end product. But over recent weeks, Neto's been out. Feels like he's kind of taken the onus and taken responsibility, and he's getting that productivity now.
Yes, he's a player that I've always really, really liked because I do tend to side with the sort of striker who tries his hardest, who runs the channels, who occupies, who links play, but doesn't necessarily score all the goals. I've always been more of a Matheus Cunha kind of guy than like a Darren Bent kind of guy, right? I don't necessarily like the I'll just do the last bit and stand here while you do all the work. I like the guy who rolls his sleeves up like Cunha, takes the ball 40 yards, transitions you from defence to attack, gets you into those areas. For a long time, I've wished he'd scored more goals. It's been a problem all his career. I know he's only about 24 years of age, but he's been playing regular football for six or seven seasons now. He's up to 5 goals for the league season. His record in his entire career in Europe, as in his best ever league return, is 7, which was in the Bundesliga, where Harry Kane is about to score 58 million goals. So clearly, this has been a problem for him over the years, and it has driven me mad because the rest of his game and his skill set is really appealing. So honestly, guys, if Matheus Cunha has decided that he can finish, and if it's one of those like, Happy learned how to putt moments in Happy Gilmore, we're all in trouble because this is a force of nature striker and carrier of the ball. Great physical attributes, great speed. If he can now finish as well, some player.
Yeah, and people say I'm nasty about Wolves, but actually they scored my favourite goal last season. And so far they've scored my favourite goal this season, and Cunha was involved.
All you're being is nice to Wolves today. This feels like the Dan Bardell Wolves podcast. I love it.
No, but that's your favourite goal this season. That's not Sarabia's goal. And it was Cunha that played that lovely little dinked pass into him.
I think my favourite goal of the season was Garnacho's bicycle kick.
No, I'm still going Wolves. I love that goal. That Sarabia goal is one of my favourite goals I've ever seen. When you sat there watching a game and you're not going, ooh, doggy. I was watching. I was watching that game and I was almost about out my seat, making all kinds of noise. It's a beautiful goal. I didn't see the Garnacho as it happened because I was coming back from Villa Park, I think, or coming back from the Villa, so I didn't actually see it live. But when I was there, I was watching it on the telly. You go Garnacho as well, then, Sam, I take it.
I think so. I mean, I'd have to give it 20 minutes thought, but I haven't. But yeah, Garnacho seems like a good shout, possibly the best bicycle kick of all time.
Nice try.
I think the fact that he sprints that 7 yards backwards before hitting the bicycle kick makes it pretty special. But
I think it might win goal of the season over Sarabia's, and Garnacho's he's a decent player. He's got a future in the game. I'm sure. Sarabia's was my favourite goal. We've been talking about nice things. Let's talk about something that's not so nice. I can't remember which one of you I asked the last question to. So please, whoever didn't answer the last question, answer this one. How underwhelming have Caicedo and Enzo been? Because people are talking about this being a high-level midfield for a number of years, but for that money, you need those players to be good now. This shouldn't be as much bedding in as he's needed. I think Caicedo has improved in recent weeks, but they've got to be better than they have been, surely.
It's so difficult because obviously they have to be better than this, and I think Enzo in particular has really frustrated me. Like with Caicedo, I think it's more understandable. He's come in the summer. He's still a very young player, which is easy to forget. He's been asked to play a different role to what we saw previously at Brighton. There's also a lot of pressure on him, given the very public kind of tug of war between Chelsea and Liverpool for his services. And
he was
I'm sure
injured.
he will come good. And he was injured, exactly. And he came in injured. And I also think we're seeing him Enzo didn't play last weekend, and Caicedo played in kind of the more Enzo role and was very good. Again, in midweek when they played Newcastle, Enzo went off ill after half an hour. But even before then, Enzo was kind of not really getting involved, and Caicedo was the one dropping in and getting the ball off the defenders and looking to get Chelsea up the pitch. And I do think that seems to suit him, but they have an issue there where you can't really have two players sitting in front of the back four who both want to play that role, which is an issue. But then, with Chelsea and all Chelsea kind of conversation this season, there is this big elephant in the room, which is their chronic underperformance of their underlying numbers, where it feels like in a different set of circumstances, some better finishing, some better goalkeeping, fewer individual mistakes from centre-backs, which has been an issue for them this season. Chelsea could be having quite a good start to the season without much changing in terms of their performances between both boxes, and then we're not really even having this conversation. I do think the midfield trio of Gallagher, Caicedo and Enzo does lack something. I think when you have Gallagher in your side, who obviously presses so well and is a really aggressive player in that most advanced midfield role, you are therefore taking out someone who is necessarily a creative player in that role, which I think when you're a top level, if you want to be an elite team, it's quite hard to do that with 65% possession in every game. If you've got a player taking up that position between the two ball players in midfield and the front three, who isn't really going to link up play particularly effectively. I don't think that's Gallagher's game. And that, to me, is a bit of an issue. But it's way too early in my mind to start writing them off. I do wonder, though, with Enzo, given his stock is falling pretty quickly from, it was a year ago, 2 days ago, a year ago yesterday, that he lifted the World Cup. And since then, things have not gone particularly well. And I do wonder with him, is a part of this that he maybe doesn't want to be there, and he probably thinks, hold on, we're not going to get the Champions League next season. This is all a bit of a mess. What am I doing here? Which understandably might have an impact on his performances.
Interesting that you say that midfield might be missing something, that midfield three, George, because Nkunku is now available. Could he be that missing piece of the jigsaw, Sam? A really, really good footballer. I think he was probably the most exciting of Chelsea's summer signings in my eyes, and he hasn't got to play yet. Proven at the Champions League level at the very least, so we know he's a high level player. Could he be that difference maker? Because then suddenly you're looking at the two that we've just spoken about sitting in midfield. You've then got probably Palmer on the right, Sterling on the left, and then Nkunku playing off Jackson, or I imagine Nkunku might play up top as kind of a false nine as well. Suddenly I think he might knit everything together a little bit more nicely for Chelsea.
I think he will knit things together really nicely. I think he is that kind of player. We've seen him in all sorts of different roles over the years, for PSG, for Leipzig, for his national team. I've seen him play as part of a striking duo, running off the shoulder at Leipzig. I've seen him playing as an 8 for PSG. I've seen him play wide. Pochettino has talked about all the different positions he can play. Funnily enough, and I thought very interestingly, Dan, when Pochettino talked about all the different things that Nkunku can do, he did not talk about playing as a striker. He mentioned him wide as a 7 or an 11, as he called it. He mentioned him as an 8 or a 10. He did not say 9. Whether or not that's a hint that Pochettino doesn't really see Nkunku stepping into that void or not, I'm not sure. We'll have to see. I think what we can say, though, is that he will knit this thing together a little bit better. He is that kind of player. He's brilliant, but we've got to walk before we can run here. He's not played a single minute of Premier League football. It can be a tough transition from the Bundesliga. He's coming off a serious injury. He's great. But it's again, I know Chelsea sort of lurch from position to position here, where they're constantly looking for a saviour. They're looking for a fix. And Nkunku right now looks like the next possible one. And again, we will just have to give him a little bit of time, I think, to bed in and to adapt, because it's a big change for him. But no doubt about it, in games that, as George says, you get 65% of the ball and you want to be a little bit more creative, maybe knit things together between the lines a bit more. And Nkunku is a better shout than Gallagher. In the big games right now, Gallagher is shining because he's leading that press, blocking off the middle of the pitch, making Chelsea really obstinate and difficult to play against. Against Sheffield United, is it necessary? Can you switch things up? And that's about having options. But I don't want to crown Nkunku too soon, but I do think he has the material here to really change a lot for Chelsea in a good way.
It's interesting with Conor Gallagher, isn't it, George? Because he's captained the side for the majority of the season. Every time I talk the dog box, he's captained the side for the majority of the season. But yet January coming up, Chelsea, if they do want to sign anyone, they're probably going to be really wary of FFP, and he's homegrown, which we know the benefits of selling someone homegrown. We know the benefits that come with that. He's playing every week, he's captain, but yet when January comes round, they'll still talk about Conor Gallagher perhaps leaving, but Pochettino at least seems to really, really like him.
And that's a worry, because if you've suddenly got Mauricio Pochettino saying, hold on, this is a player that I really trust and I really want in my side, and you're going to go above me and you're going to sell him in order to fund a ridiculous amount of overspending, then, especially given the poor start to the season, is that when cracks start to emerge between the relationship between Todd Bowley and Mauricio Pochettino? Like, I cannot imagine he would entertain the possibility of selling a player that he basically plays whenever fit, that he's made captain in the absence of the prolonged absence of Reece James. Like, it is, it would be a sign. I think if Conor Gallagher is sold, it will be a real sign that things are not okay at Chelsea, and they've massively screwed up in terms of the way that they're recruiting. I personally don't think it would be the worst thing from a football perspective, but I'm not their manager. So, if they manage to get a fair fee for a homegrown player who I think is a very effective player in certain situations, but I think whenever you look at these kind of players, if you gave Conor Gallagher to Pep Guardiola, to Jurgen Klopp, and to Mikel Arteta, do you think they would want him? Do you think they would see him as an important player as he is at Chelsea? I definitely don't think so. And by that measure, I think Chelsea therefore have to do better. But again, you don't really trust their recruitment in order to make those decisions.
Klopp is the most likely of those three managers to find a real use for him. But I roughly agree with the sentiment. And it is worrying. Pochettino could not have been more clear. He wants Conor Gallagher in this team, in this squad. He does not want him to be sold. If he is sold above his head, there is a huge disconnect at this club between I'll borrow an American term, front office, because there's all sorts of sporting directors at play here, but the front office and the manager, and that is not the sign of a well-run club. Dan, we can sniff it a mile off. We've lived through it. George, you probably have too. It's concerning when you're involved, and you're talking about £1 billion spend and 8-year deals, and manager having players sold from underneath him. It's not good.
Well, I felt in recent, I know they won midweek, but I felt Pochettino he's looking a bit agitated at the moment. He seems a bit more antsy when he's talking in his press conferences as well, doesn't he?
Yes, he does, but he's under immense pressure. That haven't really made too many steps forward, despite all of this spending and despite the sort of fresh era and the promise from the summer of his appointment. Sterling getting back to his best. And as George kind of points out, a lot of this team is actually kind of working okay, but the points aren't on the board. Any kind of industry standard expected points model has Chelsea way higher up the table than they are right now. All of the underlying numbers, XG and XG against, suggest that Chelsea are performing at a top 6 level. They're not there. I'm sure that's really annoying. Like, it would annoy me too if I had to watch all these chances being spurned, and even Thiago Silva finally dropping a stinker. How many more things can go wrong? And then if my captain gets sold in January when I don't want him to, no wonder he's scowling.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do, but I do think Nkunku will really, really help things at Chelsea. And that is the end of our show for this week. And I think that's us done until the new year. I could be completely wrong with that. So if you do subscribe with your post notifications on, you'll find out if I'm wrong or not. But I believe we are done for 2023, and we'll be back in 2024. Thanks to those that have watched the pod all the way through the year, and we hope you have a wonderful Christmas day. And those of you that have just come in and started watching the pod as well, we hope that you have a good Christmas day too. But do tell all your friends and your family about the pod, because we think it's a good pod. I've really, really enjoyed today, and we'd like to get those numbers up. So make sure you're telling everyone about Edge of the Box, Who Scored's podcast in association with Odds Checker. To keep an eye on the socials as well, because that will tell you when we're coming back. Enjoy all the football over Christmas, and there's plenty of it starting tonight. Always my favourite time of the year. Gonna have to go before my house blows away and the dogs absolutely lose their mind. But thanks to Sam and George for joining me. Have a wonderful Christmas and a happy New Year.